welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast. My name is Kurt North and thank you for joining us. Welcome my co-host, Mr. Mark Adams. How the devil are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks. Last episode of Series X. I'm excited.
Last episode of Series X, called The Beginning. Joining us this week is Mr. Carl Bryan.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We are at the beginning. We have reached a milestone. There's 2 series to go. Oh, well, there's also The Promised Land, depending if you count that as 13 or if you count that as a movie. It's up to you. But yeah, we've got some interesting things to do. Red Dwarf 11 is round the corner, Mark.
It's quite exciting. New Red Dwarf for me.
But let's get through old Red Dwarf, because technically this is old Red Dwarf for you now.
It is. It's 10 years old.
Okay, The Beginning is the 6th and final episode of Series X of Red Dwarf, Soul Says Tongue-Tied. It was released on the 8th of November, 2012. This is an intriguing episode. What do you make to it, Carl?
I really like this episode. It's the film.
Yeah.
It's basically the film. But I really like it. It feels like it was a film with the flashbacks in it, the additional characters. This goes into what I was saying in the previous episode where Doug thinks this is it. You know, he's going to round it off at 10. And if he's going to round it off at 10, he's going to do the film by hook or by crook. As I've probably said at various points over the last 4 years, that Doug's very much the film. He wants the film. And I think he thinks if this is his last one, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of understandable that he wants the film because it's been talked about for 20 years.
By Doug, mostly.
Well,
It's nothing but a trier, is our Doug, is he?
I think in the way this is shot as well, it's very cinematic. In the way we were talking about the previous episode was a very, almost like a filler episode. This one, it's got purpose. Like the shots are very laid out the way he wants. We've got flashbacks, we've got other characters, and they're cast really well, I think, some of the other characters we get in this. And these were probably people that if he did do the film, he would have cast them for this. Apparently the actor, was it Richard O'Halloran? It was Hoagie, was supposed to be Hoagie in the film.
Oh, right, okay.
So he's been reading for this part for a very long time. So to not give it to him after 20 years or whatever it was. Yeah. I mean, he was the writer at the end of Back to Earth as well.
Yeah.
He's back and you don't recognize him in the Hoagie getup, which is a bizarre getup, it has to be said.
Absolutely. Mark, what do you think in general before we dive into the full episode?
I hadn't clocked you as the writer, but I knew just from a quick look on Wikipedia that Hoagie was meant to be in the film. I think it does feel like it had the budget poured into this episode. There's the CGI and there's the, like Carl said, the extra characters. And compare it to last episode, which had a few boxes with lights in made to look like vending machines and nothing really other than that. Yeah, it feels like this was where the money went. And I got no problem with it because it's a lot of fun. It's a really good episode. And yeah, Hoagie's not a simulant, even though he looks like a simulant. That confused me.
What is he?
I don't know.
They explicitly say he's not a simulant, even though he looks exactly like a simulant.
He's a rogue droid.
Right, well, okay, let's dive into it then, because like you say, it's very kind of, filmy, more story-based stuff, because we start with an expertly cast young Rimmer on Io.
I was going to say that. I thought that the casting was great. He really does get the idea of Rimmer down really well. And yeah, the young actor that plays him, I mean, again, he'll be 30 now, but it was really, really well done. I think his dad was cast really well as well. And it really did emphasize just the cruelty of his childhood and his background and his upbringing. Really well done.
He likes a bow tie.
What we all like a bow tie.
Who doesn't like a bow tie?
Everyone likes a bow tie. Bow ties are cool.
They
They are. It sounds silly to say. They got the hair right. They got the hair spot on young Rimmer.
It's remarkable how important that is, though, isn't it?
But the facial expressions, the way he talked, the cadence in his voice when he's talking to himself as he goes down the hall, you get the feeling that this lad is...
It's just the hall and the places on IO that have obviously seen the ways of the UK establishment by having 3-pin plugs and fire extinguishers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
IO, it's basically 1970s Britain. But yeah, it's cast so well. And the sadness, as well as obviously showing the undeniable cruelty that Rimmer went through as a kid, the sadness when he doesn't understand that you're a guinea pig.
But he's so used to being treated cruelly that he assumes that he's been treated cruelly when she's actually been kind. That was so sad. You're right.
It was very clear that she was into him, and Rimmer self-sabotages, like Rimmer always does, because of the background he's had. I think over this last series, and probably a bit of... No, more than just this last series, it's really put into perspective, and it sort of reveals more as we get on. This was done so well, and there isn't a part of this that I feel wasn't in the film. Like, I could see this being in the film as like the...
This felt like it was storyboarded for a film, doesn't it? The whole scene feels like it's all blocked and out, and that was the scene.
Because I think when we eventually get to the Promised Land, I think this will be the same. This isn't going to give anything away. Doug knows there won't be that many new people watching the film, I think. And so, because if this is how the film goes, it is literally just dropping in on a day that could be any day in the last 10 series. Well, apart from 6. Apart from the Starbug ones. Any day in the last series of Red Dwarf, this could be 3.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's just something that happened. In the same way like you used to get the film versions of, On the Buses or Steptoe and Son and things like that. It was never going to wrap up anything major plot-wise. That would just be an episode from their life. It's just a big episode of whatever that show will be. And I think that's what the film is it's just a big episode of Red Dwarf that they can put more money into.
Looking at this episode, as I say, the whole scene with Io seems really well blocked, and as I say, it's the disappointment in the way that Rimmer's been portrayed, and and the fact he could have been so much more. Definitely a wide potential, but you feel that the shift as well goes into Red Dwarf, and Red Dwarf does the Star Wars move. It's like you're seeing Red Dwarf from underneath, which we've never seen that I can think of a scene like that. It felt like we're going to be doing Star Wars here, and there's obviously other elements that we'll talk about, but it feels like it's the natural element is like you get some backstory, and then we're going to go into a normal day with the Red Dwarf crew, and then we're going to go into the adventure. And it does feel that is something that TV shows do into movies.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the shot of the ship, I must admit, and this is me being pernickety, I thought was, because it's a model shot, it's one of the older model shots, I thought it was the model shot from the credits flipped upside down and made dark. This is because this episode was dedicated to Peter Ragg, who just passed away.
Yeah.
And I think having that, because, there's not many stunts in this. There are special effects, but they're CG, but there aren't many practical effects in this. So I think showing the models was kind of a bit of a homage to Peter Ragg in a way.
They do look great. The models do look absolutely amazing. 10, they really do. In HD, they look great.
Unless Hoagie shooting through the roof and rubble landing on him, that's a very Peter Ragg effect. That's very bottom.
It is worth touching on the loss of Peter Ragg, it said 1946 to 2012. That means he was born on just a year or so before my dad. And he died at 66. That's an incredibly young age. And it's so sad that we lost his talent so early. But, you know, he was working on Series X as well.
I think that was the last thing he did. He retired after that.
Yeah.
I mean, he worked on... I mean, he was one of those BBC contracted guys. Like, what do you need? Special effects? We'll send Peter Ragg.
Yeah.
And as I say, the main two I remember are Red Dwarf and Bottom, because a lot of the behind the scenes and the bloopers and stuff, they do tend to feature him. There's ones with, like, you can see in the back of a lot of the bottom bloopers, Peter Ragg fixing things that Rick Mayles just ran through, and he was very good at practical effects. Yeah, I think it's a nice little touch to memorialise Peter Ragg. I can imagine if they were really going to go all out, they'd have had somebody get blasted in the face by something or fire an air cannon full of cork at Danny Jean-Jules for old time's sake.
Another thing with the film, or this idea of the film, is that Yuki is my brother, right? It's the mundanity of life that they're trying to really portray, like nothing's happening, because you get that wave of, right, something is big's going to happen. So you get the, Crichton going, next floor up, 2 along, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't want me. Yeah, okay, whatever. And it gives you like this idea of like, we've been surrounding you for decades now and we're just really bored of it. And obviously when you get to Lister gets kind of to the point of frustration with him going, you keep doing this to me. And as I say, it's just that whole build up to, we're eventually going to have something big happen.
I like the build of the cat says you want Lister, Crichton points out where Lister is, so they know what's going on. When you get to Lister, you almost think for a second he doesn't know what's going on because he tells Rimmer to smeg off, which might just be habit. But yeah, then obviously it's revealed that Hoagie keeps turning up and challenging them to a duel across time and space.
It's interesting that there's another character in the universe that's as bored as our cast. That's kind of a fun concept, I think.
I think you could imagine him being a recurring character. It is someone that you could actually imagine coming back. Just the way they're dealing with him, and they're just like, oh, he's the nuisance. He's almost like the younger brother, isn't he? It's like they've brought in like a younger brother aspect.
He's not now Bernard.
The voice is on the right side of annoying. And part of me thinks that they did the outfit the way they did in case they ever recast him. That's why he's got all the droid stuff, the stuff across the eyes and the obvious Donald hairdo, which feels overkill. But yeah, I just like it, especially when the facade breaks and he's like, oh, please duel me across time and space. It's when he says he'll give you a head start.
When he's on talking about the maps and it's like, to the things you've never seen. It's like, how do you know what we've seen? We've seen a smegging lot, man. Come on.
He sums it up very easily when he turns to Lister and says, well, how else are we going to stop from going insane? Good point. Although they do respond with, well, for you, that's too late. And it does make me wonder, how long has Hoagie been chasing them? We never see Hoagie's first interaction with them, which would have been an episode of... I like the fact we never see the first time.
Yeah.
If it was a previous series, you'd have, this would be, you meet Hoagie, something had happened, Hoagie would go off into deep blue yonder, we'd never see him again. Because Red Dwarf doesn't do, recurring guest stars unless it's played by a member of the main cast. Really. But having Hoagie just drop in, it's not a great comparison, like Q.
Yeah.
Every so often.
Yeah.
Just, he could bring trouble with him. And that's what the episode is. Like he does in this. He's pissed off he's pissed off the simulants. And they've dragged Red Dwarf into it. Which is probably one of the only differences between what we thought the film to be and what this is the original film treatment. It might have changed during the writing process was...
I think it said there's a number of drafts. So it's basically, at this stage, it's like just ideas that he's drafted over the course of the years, isn't it? Wrote more than the finished article. There is obvious things like you say, the IO stuff and things that's been put together, but there's the fragments of what he wanted to do, I think.
Because the one that was like the biggest one I remember for the longest time, and I remember seeing like mock-up artwork for this, was they finally get back to Earth because they find a distress signal. And it's because Earth's under attack by these like simulant mutant things. Basically like every baddie you ever got combined into one. Which sounded not very Red Dwarf. They sounded very alien more than anything else. But Red Dwarf is the last ship to get back because it's been so far away, and everybody else is just beaten. So it's basically Red Dwarf against a bunch of Xenomorphs. And that was the one I heard for the longest time. But I think that's the ending to this would have been how they outsmarted the Xenomorphs. They did have a name, but I can't remember what it was.
I do find it bizarre that Hoagie looks like how I would imagine a simulant to be, and the simulants look like Star Wars baddies. I wonder why they made that decision.
It could be all they had. Howard, what have you got? Put this on him. Because he's blatantly got a pair of football pads on. It's not solid wood over a thing with lights behind it. It's wood with holes in with lights behind it, and they put plastic with holes in over football pads, I think, for Hoagie, and just covered him in tat. Just general detritus.
What I did notice, as I'm flicking through on it actually, is Hot Drinks, my logo, is outside. What's happened?
What's happened to Hot Drinks?
Hot Drinks is down. It is right outside the actual cabin, outside the bunk. But what's happened to 23?
What?
Have they had a falling out?
Vendor bar.
Vendor bar's gone. Hot Drinks is there.
Maybe they swapped. Maybe Lister, maybe they both agreed they wanted to swap, and Lister moved them to the other one so they could have a bit of a timeshare.
Or maybe Hot Drinks, decided she liked him touching her logo.
Maybe she grew fond of it. And Vendor bar might be around the corner though. She might still be on the floor in the corner.
Maybe Vendor bar told Hot Drinks what she can see through the crack in Lister's door.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Tell a lie. I've got it on in the background as well. Something has just happened, which is very Peter Rag, which is the hull cracking.
Oh, yeah.
And everything smashing against them. That is very Peter Rag.
The Crichton bit there seems a bit weird to me. That seems a bit out of character. I don't know if that's out of character or the fact that he just seems oblivious to what's actually happening when it's obvious that it's happening.
Maybe he's still in a very casual mood because it's like, oh, it's Hoagie again. But it's not taken. It's taken a bit longer for him to realise what's happened. Or this is just his way of dealing with high stress, is to clean, which is what we all do.
Fair.
And then obviously with Hoagie being the one that sucks into the actual thing to stop the air pressure from leaving.
I've got a pedant question.
Okay.
Rimmer's hard light, but he's still a hologram. Why does he get blown about? He hasn't got any substance.
He has if he's hard light.
Oh, I was going to say the light bee, but...
The hard light, actually, it projects hard light.
Yeah, so he has got substance, because you can punch him in the face, so presumably wind would blow him about.
But couldn't he just switch on soft light and then he'd be fine?
I don't know if he'd have time to do it while you're getting blasted around like that.
I mean, we are all 99.99999999999% empty space.
True.
Speak for yourself.
A diamond's pretty much empty space as well. So Rimmer takes hold of his little device.
I thought it was an award the first time I watched it. I was like, what's he doing?
And then Hoagie kind of goes, oh, what's the point? So he's given up now. That is the end of his story. He's given up. That's it. He can't do it anymore. He's realised, and bye-bye, Hoagie.
I do like Hoagie in this episode, but then we move on to some of my favourite characters in the episode. I love the simulants. One, they remind me of the simulants from Series 6 with the slick back hair and the slightly pale makeup and, the see you in Silicon Hell, that kind of whole vibe. The fact that they are so stupid as well, with the sliding the knife across and he immediately stabs himself. and he actually just wants him to go and polish the sword. Because initially, it was like, oh, he's killed himself. And I was like, oh, he's a simulant. He's going to be all right, but he's going to be in a fair bit of distress. I was wondering, actually, is Harry-Carry still a term that can be used? Because it is a Japanese word, isn't it? No, it's seppuku, isn't it?
Seppuku would probably be what you'd be looking for. Harry-Carry is a weird Western bastardization, I think. I don't think it's grossly offensive, but you probably should be using seppuku.
Again, I suppose because it's got that sort of sing-song tone. And again, it's a very 80s. Maybe just Doug flipped out and went back to the 80s mentally for a bit. I mean, I really enjoy the fact that he refers to him as the Dominator. It's all very, the slight kink to it, where he has to sort of drop on the knees and goes, "My Dominator, forgive me." It's like, okay. The thing as well is the head of them, the simulant general, doesn't realize, the actor did not realize he was in a comedy until he'd shot the first couple of scenes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
He did his scenes, which he does perfectly, and then apparently he watched something else that was being filmed and he had to lean into someone and go, "Is this a comedy?" Like, yeah. I'm like, oh. And he just had that moment of, whoops. So he's been playing it like a proper horror villain, even though he's got like what looks like a Game Boy control pad stuck to his head.
Well, the thing about this, right, so when he does do the deed, is the comedy of it is his mannerisms. Ugh, and just the way that he's like, ugh. And then later on when he's got like the intestines, I might need that bit. You know, it's stuff like that. It's the campness of the way that it's delivered, which is something that we don't really see in Red Dwarf that much. I mean, I'm not a massive, like, a person who enjoys that kind of campness, but because it's so out of kilter to what Red Dwarf generally do, it works to such good effect that it's just the way he's like, right, polish my sword, and it's the funny man and the dry man sketch as well, because it's like the Tommy Lee Jones and the Will Smith, isn't it? It's that kind of thing to it.
Which you can't do in Red Dwarf normally, because all the characters aren't either straight or funny.
The fact that he has to go and explain to the Dominator, he might need to think about what he says before he says it. It could be taken the wrong way. It's that very British, almost hidey-high, stiff upper lip and his, "Oh, don't cut my insides out. Oh, well, I wouldn't be able to make it for high tea." That kind of thing. And I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm sure a lot of us grew up watching is that kind of thing. So I think that triggers kind of a bit for me in the sort of like, you recognize these characters like, oh, that's Jeffrey so-and-so from Heidi High in a performance kind of way.
I have actually had the Dominator before where it's like, come on, debate me. And then they don't want to listen to you. You know, it's like, it's, I recognize that. You know, by all means, my door is always open, and those managers are the most dangerous ones that say, my doors are always open for you to listen to me. I'm glad to listen to what you've got to say. And then they formulate it in their own minds of like, no, it's my way or the highway kind of thing. And they don't realize they're doing it often. But
you can come and talk to me about anything, parentheses, and I will use that against you.
That's it, Carl. Exactly that.
Yeah, we've all had managers that way. This one just happens to be a psychopathic stimulant. But yeah, no, I mean, you could put him in an office sitcom and he could play it exactly the same, apart from the sword bit. There's a lot of admin in being simulants, just from on that specific ship.
A lot of the high table, isn't it? It's like the high table. It's kind of that medieval aspect to it, and you know that's probably what they all do all of the time. That's basically their life, is going around that table and having that debate.
Yeah, and I do love the fact that there's the candles in the background, because that they just did not have a set.
Yeah.
What have we got? Dark room. Go get some candles. Will it work? It'll make you look spooky-ish.
There's a few Star Wars allusions in it. You mentioned Star Wars with the simulants. I mentioned Star Wars at the beginning with the ship Red Dwarf coming at that kind of the Death Ship kind of thing, wherever that Star Wars ship is, which I can't remember what they're called now, the triangle ones, but never mind. I'm a Star Trek fan. And then they go into an asteroid and hide in an asteroid field. Very, very Star Wars.
Colin and I, when we did the episodes looking at, predicting what we were going to see in the episodes with the theme tune, we said that specifically that bit where the ships attacks Red Dwarf felt very Star Warsy. And they didn't let us down, did they?
No.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, throughout all the series, the music's been good. And I don't know if it's been Howard Goodall all the way through. I presume it is. Need to double check the credits, but Howard Goodall's just a very good composer. And it shows because he's worked on pretty much everything over the past 30 years.
Howard Goodall is he's just a fantastic musician. To have something like Red Dwarf, which is instantly recognizable in the landscape UK television history, is just incredible, and it's amazing. They do talk about Rimmer being dead and the fact that he decided to get dead out the way early. And we get the whole scene where they say that his last words were "m," which we know it isn't, but it does feel like that's more like just him having a joke with things. And, it's unreliable narration in that regard, but I think it's quite funny.
He's never really done before is that in Mortal Danger he's gone, it doesn't really matter, I'm already dead. I think it's good that it's Rimmer focused, because we've had, for Lister, we've had Kachansky, we've had the crew, we've had, bringing everyone back, trying to keep him sane. A lot of the episodes are primarily Lister-centric. So to have this one, again, because, as I said in a previous episode, I think Doug thought this was it, that this was his big reveal for Rimmer, and Rimmer coming full circle. I like it. I really love this part. I kind of compare it to recently. We've had the Ncuti Gatwa Doctor, and have both of you seen anything with this new Doctor?
We talked about Ruby Road actually on this podcast because we thought, isn't it interesting that entanglement is a very similar concept?
Yeah, so they've done the thing of, and yes, some of this is because of the Disney involvement, where now they've kind of...
Red Dwarf's been bought out by Disney.
That'd be great. Either that or Big Finish.
I need a big Finish button now as well. Big Finish! Carry on, Carl. I interrupted you. I apologise.
That's all right. It's with when they've done the thing of, Tennant's Doctor is still out there healing from the trauma of the past 13 series, or 14 series or what it is. So by the time when he turns into Ncuti Gatwa, he's fine. He's dropped all his baggage and essentially can start again. That reminded me of what they've done here with Rimmer, in that they've closed the circle, with a lot of Rimmer's hang-ups. Yeah, there's going to still be some there that he's been treated like crap his entire life, but the big thing is now gone.
Well, no, the big thing is that they've always been in situations like this and always find a way out, Carl.
True.
You remember that time, like that highly corrosive microorganism? Do you remember that moment?
I do, but that was a fluke.
And it was almost destroyed Red Dwarf,
Mm-hmm.
It almost destroyed Red Dwarf. You remember the highly corrosive microorganism? They got out of that one.
True.
No, thanks to Rimmer.
True.
True.
They suggest he can't claim the credit for that. It was, as you say, Carl, it was a total fluke. And you think that it was an accident. Do you think it was an accident the way he did? What, sorry?
No, I understand that. Yeah, you think that was an accident. It's such a lovely callback. Mm-hmm. It's that thing of, how did they get out of it? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it was just brilliant when Mark started saying it, like, back in, I don't know, Red Dwarf 5, 6 or whatever. Like, well, they never finished that. I went, oh, yeah, wait, it gets mentioned, Mark. Mark, it gets mentioned.
Yeah.
And
fine.
I was hoping to build it up to the point where he was like, oh, we're going to get a solution to it. And it's like, nope. And I love that baiting. I love the fact he's baited the audience to go, actually, we know you're going to ask this question. We're going to fill this in, and we're not going to do it. But not only once, but twice. They do it twice in this episode. And, ironically, at the very, 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 very end.
It's the second one they do. Oh, yes, at the very, very end. Yes.
Yeah, after the credits.
Which is the only time they've really done that, the after the credits thing.
They've done during the credits, but I don't think they've ever done after the credits, have they? So,
something I will bring up here before it goes into the big battle scene is we've got the gun, whatever he calls it, the gun that dissolves matter.
Yeah, the Molly D.
The Molly D, which is a great name for it. But the special effect of them dropping through the floor is so shit. It's so bad. You get the feeling that was the one where it's like, everything else needs this money. We'll come up with something when it gets time to do that. And then when they got there, they're like, oh, top of the pops, 80s effects. That'll be it. What's built into the desk? That kind of thing. And, it works. But yeah, it did take me out of it for a second because it was like, so bad. That was really so bad. Although it does give the line of wibblified, which is probably the cat's biggest joke in the whole show.
Yeah, the cat does again struggle to get any real airtime, but he gets to be a pain again, and that's entertaining. And the other thing I really liked around this time was the timetable. Rimmer putting up a timetable. That is a deep cut, but it is very, very much appreciated.
I mean, I would push back a little bit because there's a bit of a push and pull with Cat because you've got the string game. You've got to play the string game. But while he's doing the string game, he becomes quite insightful.
Yes.
Because he's the one messing with your head, and the cats feel that. And I like the fact that they've introduced that bit of cat lore where it's like, because obviously cats do know when you're not very well. You know what I mean? You do get that sense.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice touch actually with Rimmer and Cat because they're not a pairing you see that much. And if you think back to the end, then it actually is them two together because he gets there's a scene in the corridors with them. So I think that's nice having that kind of mirror to it.
Even if this episode was the end of the show,
yeah,
which I'm pretty certain they thought it might have been. This is Cat's big moment. This is the redeeming thing. I think if they did it as a film, I think Danny John Jules might have played it a tiny bit more serious. And there'd have probably been a bit of swelling music as Rimmer understands what he's doing or takes in what he's saying. But yeah, I think, it's a really good scene of Danny John Jules being what you think he's being, which is the cat and very playful and stupid. But he's actually, and it's the slightly serious way he goes, well, I'm a cat. Of course I'm going to know when you're not doing well. He knows what he's doing. This is his job, to be a cat. Also, the battle sequences where you see the simulants attacking Red Dwarf look great before they leave in Blue Midget. And I'm really quite happy to see Blue Midget back.
It doesn't dance, though.
No.
I mean, it's clearly a redress of the main cockpit in Red Dwarf, but...
Yeah.
Because what they've done there is they've kind of gone, right, we'll film these scenes at the end because we're going to break it down anyway. Let's change the set around and let's do it. That's what that set is.
Tell you what I also like around this period of time is the weapons gag where they've got like a fork. And this did make me question something. And we don't see them for the entire season. What happened to the bazookoids?
Can imagine, 3 million years, everything has a certain shelf life, I can imagine. So maybe they just rotted away. I mean, the most likely answer is they probably lost the blueprints and no one could make one. But that's a good point, actually. But I mean, a lot of the stories in this aren't massively bazookoid needed, are they?
The argument, I think, would be they have to get... I mean, I know Rimmer has to take the hologram thing, but the argument could be that they just didn't have time. They had to just get to Blue Midget. Because that might be an argument for Starbug as well, is the fact they couldn't get to Starbug because they need to get away quick. But then, obviously, the Molly D thing, when they're shooting it around and stuff, is a bit like, well, you're taking your time a little bit. But that's certainly an interesting one. Star Wars. Going back to Star Wars, I'm Not Your Father. which gets me every time. You feel it within or something like that, obviously, which is based on the Force. But
look within yourself, you know it's true. Yeah, it is.
No, it's not true. It's verbatim, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Chris Barry switches it around like it's impossible. That can't be true rather than that's not true. It's impossible. I think that's the only thing they change.
Yeah.
And the guy playing Rimmer's dad or Rimmer's not dad is so deadpan in this and such a dick to the last.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so now you know this, I'm not getting you any further birthday present.
Vicious.
Which part of me was like, kind of didn't expect him to have given them any anyway.
And the fact that his dad's called Dungo.
Yes. I do.
Dungo.
I do like that Rimmer says his proper name.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. There's a bit before this that we kind of jumped over where they ask Rimmer to come up with the military strategy, and there's a nice moment of Rimmer not knowing why they've asked him, and then just a practical reason of like, because you're into that kind of thing. It's, you know, that's your thing. You know, it's not my thing. Crichton's thing is folding clothes.
Well,
which
that would be
really
me.
Yeah, he's really excited. I do like the bit of the cat going and what would happen where it would get to me, and Lister just ignores him.
He just goes, moving on.
Yeah.
Great.
The military strategy thing as well is like in place when we see Rimmer at the very beginning. He's reading a military strategy book on the chair as well, so that links in with that. Yeah, so I think that the fact that they give him that's his role, you know what I mean? And it's like it kind of is a bit like in Red Dwarf again, isn't it? When it's like 4 buttons, you say 4 buttons, you know, and Trojan earlier in the season.
Yeah,
but he's really taken aback that like he says, I can do this. This is what I've waited for my whole life. But I don't think he ever expected them to give it to him. And now they have. I do like the "we're smegged, all as one" line.
There's an argument to say that he's had that resentment drain early in the series as well. That he has got room in his head to actually formulate this stuff a little bit more. And he does feel a little bit more relieved. And then at the end of this, he's getting this unburdened from him. So there's a lot of things he's been unburdened with in this series.
So he's got a 6-hour plan on his battle plan timetable, which involves reading books, half a day, or hour 2 is a coffee break, a snack break, an essential snooze, and another essential snooze, which he scribbled out and says there's no time. Everything happens basically in hour 3. Make an idea web, make notes, transfer to bullet points, list conclusions. Hour 4, you spend half of it pondering, another snack break and a snooze. And then in the last 2 hours, he goes all out and brainstorm ideas. So he doesn't get anything done in true Rimmer fashion if you've read the books. But
it's brilliant.
He's really good at making a battle plan last minute on very short notice.
And I think the snooze reference could be a cheeky little, well, the cat's got older.
I mean, the very last bit is it says tidy workspace. And then in the bottom corner, it says in the smallest bit, it says think of a brilliant plan. So it's basically leave everything to the last minute, then think of something.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Isn't that everyone's realistic plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking about that today at university. We were talking about deadlines and stuff and planning and doing the work now. And I'm like, I can't do it till I've got my module finished. I need to understand it. And then I'll draw a plan up, which will probably be last minute. I get to say this. Yeah. I get to say this. And this is Colin will be proud of me. We get some non-diegetic sound.
Some what?
Non-diegetic sound. In Rimmer,
what's that then?
Recalling back to when, at the beginning of IO, the scene where he's listening back to what his dad's saying in his head when he was a young boy. You hear that again, but obviously it's in Rimmer's head. So non-diegetic is when you hear music that the characters aren't hearing. Diegetic sound is when you hear music that they hear as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Gosh.
So that's Colin Jackson Brown has taught us that. So thank you, Colin. Thank you very much.
This is the scene where Crichton brings him the weapons, and then the string game scene.
Okay, so the weapons, just so you're aware, and this is for Mark, the fork, the pencil sharpener, that scene was used as a teaser for Red Dwarf 10. They use that as one of the things, as like, you know, when you get like, you look, they go on Graham Norton and stuff or whatever it may, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they would show like maybe a clip from the TV series. That clip was shown quite a lot.
It's a funny scene. I can see why they picked it.
The fact that the cat says, "What?" He's like, "How do you know all this?" He's like, "Oh, do you think my rock hard pecs are my only quality?" Which is kind of a nice tribute to Danny John Jules, who is still in phenomenal shape all these years later.
When we do get the non-diegetic sound with Rimmer hearing himself, and obviously the peer pressure that we're getting, and it's a nice reflection, actually. It's a nice bit of story writing that, you know, we're going back to that IO stage. We're going back to, you know, his dad saying, what colour is this pad, and et cetera, et cetera. You've got all of the boys from the dwarf saying, you can't do this. You're not, it's all crap. It's horrible. It's not going to work. The peer pressure then gets to the point where he does go with the crowd again, like he did on IO when he was younger. And it's that then the release of that then becomes the thing that he then starts to go, does his whole, and it is quite quotable actually for quite a few people, where he says, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And that whole spiel is actually rhymed off quite a bit. So I do like that you can tell, as I say, it's a story. This episode is a story. And there's no doubt what in my mind whatsoever, it's the movie aspect, because it feels like a story.
His hand turns into a fist and he gets all determined and then bashes it. And the slow motion of well, it's water, but I thought it was coffee initially, and spilling over. It's just great. The only bit that confused me when he goes, "Jiu-jitsu style." What are you talking about? It's like, has that been mentioned before? It's like, we'll do it jiu-jitsu style. Yeah, all we have to fear is fear itself, apart from pain, humiliation, failure, the unknown, and death. Apart from that, we have nothing to fear but fear itself.
It's a great line, isn't it? It's just, that is...
It is a great line. Yeah, it's the same type of line as the "What have the Romans ever done for us?" Isn't it, from Monty Python? Or the thing that reminded me of more is, have either of you two seen Three Amigos with Martin Short and Steve Martin?
Long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah.
It's probably one of my favourite bits in that film is everyone has their own personal El Guapo. Our El Guapo just happens to be a guy that wants to kill us. And it just reminds me of just that. I'm going to do a speech, not going well.
What do we make then to Rimmer's solution? Because it's a very Rimmery thing to do. The fact that he's quoting freedoms and privileges of prisoners of war, it's against this. I'm going to write it down in my notepad. He's using the very thing that people get annoyed for, but it actually becomes a hero staple. And I actually really like that. I like the fact that they've switched that on its head. That all of those intricate, frustrating, like moments that are kind of like will get on people's nerves becomes the very thing that actually helps them win this battle.
He's weaponized Rimmer.
Yeah.
We get a very good Maladio.
We do.
He tells them they're on report, which again, if this was the end and this was the film, that would be a cheering in the cinema moment. I think that you're on report, Maladio.
Yeah.
The weapons they're called like photon mutilators.
Photon mutilators. I put that. I just love the name. They're so ridiculous.
And they sound nasty. Yeah, they're just a typical sci-fi ball of something going through space, but it's a photon mutilator. Also, it shows that Rimmer, with his neuroses removed from the father thing and thinking clearer than he's ever done, he can quote stuff off like anything, where before he couldn't get the thing that would have made it perfect is if he quoted Space Corps directives and he was right. That
would have been amazing. That would have been incredible if they did that.
Mr. Trick there.
Yeah, if he quoted a Space Corps directive and Crichton actually confirms that he's got it right.
Yeah.
Or Crichton confirms he's got it right. That would have been another, that would have been another Avengers Assemble moment, I think.
That would have been perfect.
And because it plays out like an action film from here, with them saying the exact same thing back to him about, we surrender as under Treaty of War.
It's clever.
Him saying, sorry, didn't quite catch that. And, he's old iron balls for a moment.
Yeah. Sometimes you live and sometimes you die and then you live again. I know. I've done it myself. They're 80s, like, action lines, aren't they? Yeah, I know. I've done it myself.
He's become Ace.
Yeah.
Without becoming Ace.
Yeah, you're right.
But it's when he says he's he's a working class hero. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. His
dad's a gardener. That's pretty working class.
Yeah, it's when he says, like, oh, Dennis would have been so proud of me. I'm in command of a ship. I'm a technician. I don't even think he says he's in command of a ship, but he would have been proud of him for being a second level technician, which is, he's not adding anything on top of that to beef it up. He's just, he would have been happy with me for this. And then the audience cheer at the plot, of course, for Red Dwarf, the slime's coming home.
Do you know what? It took me a few watches to get that. I didn't. It
really?
It just didn't respond. I don't know why, but it just didn't connect. I didn't connect it. I just happened to be watching the end at one point, and I was like, "Oh my god, of course." This wasn't now. This was like at the time. I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't get that at the first watch." But then I wasn't really watching the original series that much at that point, so.
I love how they get the right balance with what they're quoting and what they're bringing together, and I think that is the ultimate kind of culmination of it, is the slime's coming home. Again, very Red Dwarf end. I know it was the film, but using the gun thing, what was it called?
Molly D.
The Molly D.
Using the Molly D to make the walls have torpedoes go through them. Brilliant. So silly, so Red Dwarf. So it just feels like you're right. This what had been the end of it. This would have been a great way to do it. Starting at the end and ending at the beginning, and the slime coming home.
If you think about it as well, at the end of the very first episode where he says the slime's coming home, Kat looks like, what? Ribber looks disgusted at the idea of being the slime coming home. And on this one, they're all like really happy and smiley, like, yeah, we are. Boys from the dwarf.
Yeah, it's like we said, it's found family. And in that first episode, they weren't that. They were just people that had been lumped together, whereas now they really have grown to be a family.
There's a little mention, and this is not me. I think it was either Ganymede or it was Tongue Tied, where it's on the website there, where it says technically, because working class hero like you and me both with Lister, Kachansky was an officer, and if Kachansky is Lister's mother, then Lister has higher status than Rimmer does.
Yeah, it does. It did confuse me for a bit where he says you and me both, but cause it didn't feel necessary, if you know what I mean, for him to say that. But I suppose it does bring it all back in.
At the same time, although they're saying like they're both working class heroes, you can still be a working class hero and have parentage that is like that. So
yeah, oh yeah,
it's just, I think this, but the gene pool is what they're trying to suggest there. But yeah, I just found it interesting. It doesn't bother me in the slightest, but it just was an interesting comment. I was like, oh, actually, yeah, they're right, aren't they? Because Kachansky was on the crew, so technically he is from higher status than Rimmer is. So which is intriguing. And then, as I say, we do get the final scene where they're just kind of wandering around, and Hoagie appears again. We thought we'd got rid of him. He's still here.
Part of me feels like, because they seem to have a very, even though he's challenging them to a duel across time and space, they're still a bit matey with each other. The fact that he's got loose makes me think he's repaired the hole in the side of the ship.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, who's he going to challenge to duels across time and space?
Yeah.
And it would be funny if, Hoagie's travelled, although he does mention, I'm sure he mentions meeting somebody else, or hinting that he's met somebody else, but the only people he found was Red Dwarf. Oh, or the as in the people he could talk to. Everyone else just tries to kill him. He stole from the Simulant's death ship, which, because they've got a death ship, you think probably best not to steal from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything with the name Death in it, not such a good choice.
Well, as Crichton says, it's kind of deathy. And then obviously we mentioned at the top of the hour as well that Peter Ragg is the final image on screen for 1946 and 2012 in memory for him. Any final thoughts then, chaps? We have finished Red Dwarf 10.
Honestly, I would have been happy if, as Carl suggested, Doug Naylor thought this was the end. I would have been so happy to have had this. I wonder if maybe I would have watched it sooner had I not known that there was an 11 and 12. I don't know. It's weird. I just don't know why I didn't watch it. I still don't know why I didn't watch it.
I mean, it took me a long time to watch it. And I think for me, it's the fear of don't ruin this. Please don't ruin this.
Yeah, and I suppose I don't have that fear. In everything I do, I'm fairly pragmatic. So it's just like, oh, new Red Dwarf, great. You know, if it's back to Earth shit, then fine. If it isn't, then great. You know what I mean? So it's just the way I look at things. But
I think it might be just that Back to Earth was bad. And that put me off. And then time passed, I guess. But I think if this had been the one-off, just 6 episodes, and then there was no more Red Dwarf, what a satisfying way to end it. A fantastic, funny, self-referential, Red Dwarfy feeling series of Red Dwarf that ended on a really positive note. It's great.
Yeah.
And this entire series was a fucking delight.
I'm really glad to hear that.
I wholeheartedly agree that if this was it, great way to go out. You know, we got the film in pieces. We had like lemons. You know, it's just a really good, what would quote unquote final series. It obviously doesn't turn out to be the final series. Part of me finds it funny that obviously he did use a lot of the film ideas in the finale in this episode. You've not seen Promised Land, have you, Mark?
No, I've not seen anything.
Have you not either, Kurt?
Oh, yeah, I have. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It does make me wonder if some of the stuff that was in Promised Land was going to be in the film, or if Doug's gone, bugger, I've completely blown all the film stuff. I'm going to have to come up with a new film.
Well, the thing is with the film, without going into too much detail, and Matt alluded to this a few times, it's not like spoilery. There is a bit of retread over Rimmer's story, so I think that is definitely been literally like rinsed out as much as they physically can. There is some great moment. There's one moment, it's such a moving moment in Promised Land, which is great, and I think it's amazing. I think it's one of the best things Red Dwarf has done, which I'm sure that Mark will quite like when you see it. But that being said, there's elements with like Promised Land where it's like, oh, okay, all right. Was that in the film? Are you kind of like stretching it out to get this hour and a half in?
Yeah,
retreading over Rimmer's story again. But then you could say that about Rimmer for Series 8. You could say it about Rimmer for this series. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that have gone on where there's a bit of retreads, and Cat is the perfect example. That Promised Land is mainly focused on the cat lore. So the fact that they've actually tried to do something new, whether or not that would have been, it doesn't feel like that would have been in a movie, but it could have been in a draft. But
kind of, because I think as well, if Promised Land was part of the movie, I think it would take away from the emotional hit of, well, one, it would be completely out of place with the whole simulants storyline, and two, I think it would take away from the emotional punch of Cat sort of coming through at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe they might have done more and more where it's like in the film where it's like the cat's useless, and then just have this moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, they wouldn't have time for that in a half an hour show with an ad break. So I can imagine Promised Land is completely different, or maybe it was another idea he's had along the way.
Yeah, well, and the thousands of redrafts he's done, because there will be loads, won't there?
Oh,
okay. So that's the end. Carl, any final thoughts?
I love this series, and the fact that I actually think, from what I remember, because it's been a while since I watched 11 and 12, I actually think it goes up in terms of quality, especially in terms of what's on screen in 11 and 12, because there's a new production team behind it.
Yeah.
Which presumably meant more money. I think Mark and Colin are really going to enjoy 11 and 12, shot back to back. So they're essentially the same series.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be quite a nice ride from here on in. I'm sure there'll be stuff that Mark and Colin aren't a big fan of, but I think for the most part, we're in for a lovely trip for the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And hopefully by the time we get there in 2029, there'll be season 13 or something else or Titan or Big Finish.
Yeah.
Big Finish.
Okay, Mark. Series 11. We're there now. We're there. You've done it. Red Dwarf 10. You've done it. You've got a Dave series under your belt now. What are you hoping for in Red Dwarf 11? And when are we watching it?
Vending machines.
Vending machines, okay.
A polymorph.
The polymorph.
A cat-centric episode would be nice.
Full disclosure for Carl, I did let slip that it was a polymorph that they might have seen.
Right.
So they're aware that there's a polymorph in some fashion. So I let that slip by accident. That's the only thing I've spoiled. Which was pretty much nailed on anyway. You got it anyway. So.
Yeah, we got that. I don't know. The return of To be honest, actually, no. I just want it to be fucking funny.
Okay.
That's all I need. That's all I want.
It's interesting, Carl's description, because I would say that I prefer 10 to 11 and 12. That being said, I do still think there is like finger wetting machine, moose kind of level jokes on occasions on it. I don't think it's as solid as 10 is, but I think it's a bit more wavy, but there is still some great things in it. And I think it's acceptable Red Dwarf, and it is much better than Back to Earth, and it is good Red Dwarf. I think that's what I would say personally.
So it's better than Series 8?
Well, it depends on how you view Series 8. I think, yes, probably is actually better than Series 8, actually. I think Red Dwarf 8, like I've said for quite some time, has probably some of the most funniest moments in it, but then it has Crikey TV and Pete. But then you've got, in Red Dwarf 11 and 12, I think there's some clangers in there, but I also think that the general humour is elevated and is kind of like fairly flatline good. You know, it's the actual base level's good. And I think there's moments when they go from good to really funny, and then it goes to good again. So I think that's the way I perceive it. Carl might disagree with me, but that's the way I see 11 and 12.
I'll be honest, 10 has been better than I remember. What this might mean for me is that when with me previously seeing them, I thought 11 and 12 were better than 10.
Right, okay.
Now on a rewatch, because it's been a while since I watched them, I could go now and go like, oh, 10's actually better. Because it's been really nice going back through 10, and it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to going through 11 and 12, because because the budget seems bigger, they do have broader concepts in the next couple of series.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. I might be slightly disappointed if I go, oh, they're not as good as I remember, but the fact that 10's better than I remember is a nice welcome balance.
Okay, chaps. Mr. Bryan, where can people find you online?
You can find me at linktree/I am Mr. Carl.
Excellent. And Mark, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MarkAdamsHC.
And you can find me on Linktree at rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. Thank you all for joining us for this Red Dwarf 10 journey. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you all for our guests in Carl, Matt, and Colin. So, Mark, you will no doubt be taking the reins and doing some fucking specials.
Yeah, we've got some lovely stuff planned, actually.
Okay, until next series, Red Dwarf 11, I can't wait for you to watch this. It's going to be great.
I'm excited too.
I challenge thee to a duel across all of time and space.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.